Gray, our top stories. Outrage as authorities in Texas admit police were wrong to delay storming the school classroom where a gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers.
The information that I was given turned out in part to
It says the US should prioritize funding for school security over aid to Ukraine.
We spent trillions in Iraq, trillions in Afghanistan. We got nothing. Before we nation build the rest of the world, we should be building safe schools for our own children in our own nation.
In Ukraine, officials warn they may need to withdraw from the eastern region of Luhansk to avoid their soldiers being captured by Russian forces.
I'm Chetan Partek. Coming up on Sport today, in 15 minutes' time, we'll be live in Paris ahead of the Champions League final. Will it be Liverpool or Real Madrid who come out on top?
Republicans have dismissed calls for gun reform days after 19 children and 2 teachers were killed by a teenager with an assault rifle in Texas. Speaking at the National Rifle Association Gun Lobby Convention in Houston, Mr. Trump said the massacre in
children and 2 teachers had been killed. As families grieve and try to understand what happened, some politicians are weighing in. In Houston, 300 miles away, former President Donald Trump condemned the shooting and said the answer was to arm teachers.
Surely we can all agree our schools should not be the softest target. Our schools should be the single hardest target in our country. And that's why, as part of a comprehensive school safety plan, it's time to finally allow highly trained teachers to safely and discreetly concealed carry.
Some in T-shirts spattered with red, calling for tighter gun control.
I don't have a problem with anybody owning a gun, but I do believe that assault rifles were never meant for civilians.
Back in Uvalde, officials organized an operation. While children in other classrooms escaped, those under attack were calling emergency services, whispering into their phones. The revelations have angered the state's governor.
the information that I was given turned out.
And daughter had been killed.
Where was that police that's supposed to be there to protect them kids? Where was he? At first they said he was there, he confronted the shooter. Then now they're retracting and saying they're not. I've been watching TV all day.
Debate, but for the families here, the prevailing emotions are shock and grief. Sancha Berg, BBC News.
Earlier, I spoke to CBS correspondent Daniel Bacchus about how people are feeling in Uvalde 4 days on from that shooting.
Different timelines from law enforcement here in Uvalde, and then yesterday that stunning revelation that they made a mistake where the head of law enforcement here, who was leading this investigation, mistakenly thought that this was a barricade school when they got word that there was a shooting here. Many of them waiting outside, many of them hearing those gunshots going off, and we saw video of them begging police officers to go inside, to do something, wanting to go inside themselves to try to stop the shooter, and that just did not happen. So when you talk to people here, many people, again, angry. They believe that police officers did not do enough, that police mishandled this situation.
And meanwhile, just a few hours drive away from where you're standing now, this NRA, the gun lobby convention, is taking place. Former President Donald Trump addressing it, saying that this is an example
based on where you stand on the issue. Former President Trump calling for overhauling school security and the nation's approach to mental health. He believes that that is going to happen by allowing trained teachers to be able to carry concealed weapons. Add gun restrictions. If you add tougher measures, then that's infringing upon their rights.
Daniel Bacchus there from CBS talking to me from Uvalde. Russian forces are continuing to make gains in eastern Ukraine. Troops, together with Moscow-backed militia units,
If the occupiers think that Liman and Severodonetsk will be theirs, they are wrong. Donbass will be Ukrainian.
But this is the firepower they are up against. Russian multiple-launch rocket systems have been devastating.
Why? I won't go so far as to say it's too late to provide the Ukrainians with any system or capability that they might need.
But with each day that passes and each Russian gain, the tide of this war seems to be turning against the Ukrainians. They know that...
That's region.
Well, I think it's right to highlight that the Russians are making tactical gains on the ground, but this is largely incremental victories to Russia, that they're taking some towns, that they're making a few miles every day. They're paying a very high price for this, but what we're seeing is really the latter stages of the Russian assault that began in February now. They've been in the field for 90 days. They've redirected all their forces into Donbass. So it's not surprising that they're making gains. The key thing now
can hold out. What about the arms? We're hearing John Kirby there talking about Ukraine offering a stiff resistance, and what the weapons we've been hearing America talk about sending perhaps long-range, heavier missiles. Are we going to see that anytime soon?
They've been in training. I mean, they're going to bring about 900,000 troops to the field in the next few months. They're going to bring this heavy equipment. It's quite likely, I think, that they will get multiple launch rocket systems. So what we see now is the Ukrainians, I think, really...
That Turkey's objection to the two Nordic countries joining NATO could be resolved. Health officials in Ireland say they have identified the first case of monkeypox in the country. The World Health Organization says it expects the number of infections to continue to rise. Has signed a trade and security deal with Samoa as Beijing seeks to expand its influence in the Pacific. As the agreements were being made, the new Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said his government would re-engage with Pacific Island nations. Australia and the United States have warned these with candour during her trip to China to discuss alleged abuses. She said she was free to talk to people unsupervised in Xinjiang, where Beijing is accused of sending hundreds of thousands of Uyghur Muslims for re-education, and organise her own interviews
in the HKSAR and beyond. The arrest of lawyers, activists, journalists and others under the national security law are deeply worrying. Hong Kong is due to be reviewed by the UN Human Rights Committee in July as a party to the International Covenant.
...3 weeks. The festival is Australia's largest event, bringing in 2.5 million visitors in 2019. Do stay with us here on BBC World News. It's now time for Sport Today.
Welcome to a world of comfort and service excellence. With our new business class suites, where your privacy is paramount. Sit back, relax in your own private space, and let us take care of everything. Qatar Airways, the airline you can rely on.
Wallonia, a way of life where creation thrives. Continuously striving for balance in a circular green economy. A land of excellence and achievement, shaping our future. Where expertise drives our world each time further. Wallonia, the land of sustainable innovation.
Welcome to Click. We're outside again. Sensors to track dangerous hotspots.
The robots are operating like a swarm of bees would.
I'd love to be a cyborg.
I've just sat here and controlled things with my brain.
It's like technology telekinesis, isn't it?
The race is on to decarbonise aviation.
Cleaning up the stuff.
The world.
London to Paris in half an hour.
Touchless coffee, driverless cars. You can virtually try on clothes.
Can we take it for a spin?
That's Click
on BBC World News.
As we face the world's greatest environmental challenges, what we need most is solutions. Our new website, Future Planet, brings you stories of the people who are working to make the world a sustainable place. And because we're committed to carbon-conscious reporting,
black man they had ever seen.
You're a really wonderful dancer, but you're never going to be a ballerina because of the color of your skin.
We achieved what we thought would be impossible, i.e. settlement rights for all workers.
She says.
Hello, I'm Chetan Partik. This is Sport Today. We're live from the BBC Sports Centre. Coming up on the programme, the fans are arriving. The countdown is on. Just a few more hours to go until... And Jimmy Butler turns it on for the Miami Heat as they beat the Boston Celtics and take the Eastern Conference Finals to a decider. Welcome along. Thank you for joining us. In the final of the Champions League, Real trying to win a record-extending 14th European Cup victory for Liverpool would see them win it for a 7th time and complete a remarkable season. They've already won the Cup double in England, only just missed out on the Premier League 2, of course. We'll be
History will tell us what people say about us because of these kind of games. I'm more than happy and very proud of what we did so far. Pretty special.
I'm treating the final naturally. Getting into the final is a big success for us. We know how demanding this club is and all about the club's history. We think we've had a very good season, and reaching the final, it has been very important for us. Now we are very close to achieving something huge this season, and we will give our all to achieve it. We're very calm.
Real Madrid, of course, head into the match having eased to the Spanish La Liga title. Liverpool preparing for what will be their 63rd match of this season. As I say, after winning the League Cup, FA Cup, they took Manchester City to the final game of the...
Actually, we're in the sort of northern suburbs of Paris. They've got a fan park about a half a mile over there, but many with tickets in hands. I see a couple just about to walk past us here, past camera. They're just getting here because they want to soak up the atmosphere. Beautiful. It's in their DNA, but Liverpool themselves looking to match AC Milan's record of 7. That would take them second in the all-time list, a long way behind Real Madrid, of course, but 19 titles on show here.
They've had to the final, the comebacks, the wins against PSG, against Chelsea, against Man City. And then you've got Liverpool with this outstanding season and Jurgen Klopp saying, actually, you know what, they're the favourites, but we're feeling very good. It's so hard to call. Who do you think has the edge going into this?
The semi-finals, Real Madrid found a way. Then that astonishing semi-final against Manchester City. 2 Rodrigo goals in the space of a minute. A Benzema winner. He has scored 15. He's astonishing, Benzema. The best season of his career. 44 goals. 50, and they've gone the distance in every competition they've been in. And you just look at their forward line of Salah, Mane, probably Luis Diaz, their new signing. Possibly Thiago coming back into the side from injury. I mean, they are just irresistible.
Ollie Foster, it is too tight to call. We'll leave it there for time. Ollie in Paris, thank you. Well, we heard what one person thought there. They're definitely not sitting on the fence. They think Real Madrid will do it. One of the football lines to bring you away from Paris, that's the news that the consortium led by the American businessman Todd Boehly. The £4.25 billion takeover has been approved by the Premier League and UK government. Chelsea were put up for sale in March before owner Roman Abramovich was sanctioned over his links to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Action, the second seed Daniil Medvedev is one of those, done and dusted. He's into the 4th round after beating Serbia's Miomir Verstappen nearly half a second slower than his Red Bull teammate. In America, San Francisco Giants manager Gabe Kapler says he will not come out for the national anthem before games until he feels better about the direction the country is going in. A minute's silence for the victims before a game on Tuesday. And the NBA, the Eastern Conference Finals, will go to a deciding match after the Miami Heat beat the Boston Celtics to level the series. Jimmy Butler, their star man, scoring 4 in Miami, and that one is on Sunday evening. Now, there'll be a moment of history at England's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium later as the Rugby League Challenge Cup final takes place. Wigan Warriors have lifted the trophy 19 times. That's more
before it moves back to its traditional home of Wembley next year. But we are guaranteed a little bit of history here this afternoon. And speaking of history, well, no side has the same heritage in this competition as Wigan. No side has won this in the 90s. For the Huddersfield Giants, well, the wait has been long. 1953 was the last time they won this competition, so almost 70 years their fans have had to wait to see them lift the trophy. They would be desperate.
Hello, temperatures in the hottest parts of Pakistan still hitting close to 50 degrees Celsius. Into India, it's Rajasthan with heatwave conditions at times, and in Mati, for example. Much of Pakistan into the northwest of India is looking dry, and again temperatures into the mid to upper 40s in some spots here. You can see where we'll see some wet weather towards at least Kerala, perhaps southern parts of Tamil Nadu and into Sri Lanka. That's it for now. Bye-bye.
Where your privacy is paramount and your experience is second to none. Sit back, relax in your own private space, and let us take care of everything.
Have made it out, and you can hear their stories of survival here on BBC World News.
Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees have fled to the Polish capital, Warsaw.
Now on BBC World News, we're off on a journey of discovery to explore new destinations around the globe and uncover hidden sides to some of the world's favourite holiday hotspots with the Travel Show team.
Sponsored by Turkish Airlines.
This week on the Travel Show, a resurrection in Bavaria.
The role of Jesus is very exhausting. We play 5 times a week and I play half of the plays, and
Am I staying in the same house? I'm actually going to be sleeping in the very room that he had as a child.
To Kenneth Branagh. But I'm here to find out more about another of the city's famous sons. And you might guess who that is if you look at this statue behind me. First though,
we're in Germany to see an incredible weekend.
Everyone in the village comes together. The youngest will be on stage and the oldest is 96 years old. And everyone comes to the theater, you get to know each other, the children grow into this tradition.
I'm a member of a church, even Muslims, poor people, even with rich people. So I bring together all on stage.
It's about 2 hours. Backstage we have to build.
Was Jahwe nicht, der geleitet hat euch alle Zeit.
Our team of technicians are 40 people.
You are very early affected to this. I mean, which child has the possibility to be part of this here and a huge stage?
Of course, the role of Jesus is very exhausting.
A Roman soldier at this time, and he was riding on a horse. And I was with my grandfather out in the Passion Play Theater. And in 2000 I was the Apostle Judas. 2010 I was Caiaphas. And this time I'm Pontius Pilate.
Jesus von Nazareth. In our world today, the message of Jesus is universal.
Wen sucht ihr?
Jesus von Nazareth. To be good to the others, to help those who are outside of the community, or talks about poverty.
After a 2-year hiatus. The Wiesn, as it's known locally, started as a simple wedding celebration for Bavarian royalty in 1810.
It's now a major folk festival, attracting millions of visitors from across the world, and sees come home, literally. Each September in the Bavarian Alps, cattle are brought down to the villages from their mountain meadows. This traditional event is called the Vichheit. The cows are treated like celebrities on the way back home to their again from this summer.
Still to come on the travel show. Simon's here celebrating 50 years of the European Interrail Pass.
We'll also pay tribute to movie greats of the past and look to the stars of tomorrow. So join me, Tom Brooke, and the rest of the Talking Movies team on BBC World News.
West of Ireland to the far east of Turkey. For half a century, Interrail has unlocked Europe for millions of rail travellers. In 1972, widespread international its 50th anniversary by coming up with a special travel ticket for under 21s. Pay £32 and you could wander almost anywhere you wanted on the railways of Europe for a month. A return airfare between London and Paris. For low-budget travellers, there was the added attraction of night trains, which provided somewhere for you to rest your head, if not necessarily sleep, as the train Bell Railway in Sussex. They were actually running scheduled services in parts of Eastern Europe and even France. Since then, of course, Europe has had a revolution on the railways. Too. It's now open to anyone of any age. And forget the old paper pass, Interrail now comes as a smartphone app. But before you jump on board, here's some things to look out for. The fast pushed the British traveller slightly over the 90-day limit for the so-called Schengen area. Using as much as you legally could would mean no visit to those countries for 90 days before or afterwards. Christian, I give you an Interrail pass valid for 1 month, the traditional, original Interrail. Where are you going to go?
Oh, I'd go into the farther reaches of Eastern Europe, into kind of deep forest. You probably think slow travel. We don't want to kind of have to rush everywhere, go to some ghastly airport. Whereas on the train, you go there slowly and you kind of, the scenery changes gradually, the weather changes gradually.
To see you on board.
To end this week, I'm in Belfast, the capital of Northern Ireland, on a pilgrimage to visit the Maradona good, Pele better, George best.
Waiting to receive was mighty best. He simply walked the ball into the net. What a goal!
And it all began here, in Belfast's Craigie estate, where fans now have the chance to stay at his childhood home.
Hello, you must be Peter.
I am. Welcome to George Best's house. Come on in. 8. So we've recently put the house back to as it would have been in 1961 when George first went over to Manchester as a 15-year-old in search of fame and fortune.
So that's his mother?
Yes, this photograph then shows George with his mother, Annie, and this photograph was taken on his parents' 25th silver wedding anniversary. So they've been stood in this very room.
I mean, this is a 20th century legend, icon, and he would have been here.
Until his death in 2008.
So this is the kitchen?
This is the kitchen, yes. Again, done as it would have been in 1961. It's very much retrified, so we have the Belfast sink here, and even the modern units like the fridge freezer.
East Side Partnership, and in its new retro-furnished state is now available as a holiday rental.
So all the proceeds that we get from the use of this house are used to support other community projects in East Belfast.
Tourists retro stuff is incredible. I mean, this was a guy who I pretty well worshipped as a child. So to be in his house, the shrine really it's throwing me, to be honest with you.
Featuring memories from George's sister, Barbara.
When Mum and Dad first moved in, it was much smaller, as there was a
But Peter has gone one better for my stay and organised a visit from Barbara herself.
There's a picture there.
But for me, it's for the fans. And the comments that we get and the feedback's been amazing. So.
In his later years, George suffered a very public battle with alcohol.
And this was where he felt safe. We tried to protect him, and George knew that when he came here, he wasn't open to the media scrutiny that he would be across the water. Isn't that right, Barbara? He felt safe.
Yeah. As a child. It's a kind of medium-sized room, the kind of room that any 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy would have, I guess. I wonder what he would have made of this. Hopefully, he would have found it quite funny. And waking up this morning was like being in a time warp. Very strange. But looking ahead, it looks like we've got another great programme coming up next week. As Queen Elizabeth celebrates 70 years of fast, it's goodbye.
Hello, a hurricane is forming and poised to move into southern Mexico. That story and more coming up in the next 3 minutes as we take a look around the world of weather, starting in North America and some stormy conditions across parts of eastern Canada and the northeast USA. Here, thunderstorms. A lot of moisture here showing off the coast of southern Mexico. That's the developing hurricane, expected to be Hurricane Agatha on Sunday, move inland on Monday with flash flooding and landslides into southern Mexico. Parts of Guatemala also seeing here. We are seeing some heat around into the Levant and still some very brisk winds down into the Gulf, and that will produce further areas of lifted dust in places. Most places in India are dry. There are a few scattered showers and storms, more towards the northeast, also for and into the southeast here. That's going to bring some heavy rain, gusty winds and turn things much cooler once that's moved on through. And turning warmer in New Zealand, but wetter too as some heavy rain spreads its way southwards. That's it. Bye-bye.
Greek, geo meaning earth and therme heat. Around 11,000 years ago, humans found a way to harness a small portion of the Earth's heat energy that was close to the surface. So what is being done today to capture that?
Can have up to 90% of their energy supplied, their thermal energy supplied by geotectonic type of energy flows.
Watch more stories like this at bbc.com/real.
Top stories. Outrage as authorities in Texas admit police were wrong to delay storming the school classroom where a gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers.
The information that I was given turned out in part.
Hello, welcome to BBC World News. The former US President Donald Trump and other leading Republicans have dismissed calls for gun reform days after 19 children and 2.
Some politicians are weighing in. In Houston, 300 miles away, former President Donald Trump condemned the shooting and said the answer was to arm teachers.
Surely we can all agree our schools should not be carry. Let them concealed carry.
He was speaking at the annual meeting of the National Rifle Association. Outside, protesters gathered, some in T-shirts spattered with red. calling for tighter gun control. Ruben Mata Montemayor heard shots and found out later his great-granddaughter had been killed.
Where was that police that's supposed to be there to protect them kids? Where was he? At first they said he was there, he confronted.
Sancha Berg, BBC News.
Russian forces are continuing to make gains in eastern Ukraine. Troops, together with Moscow-backed militia units, are reported to have taken another key city in the Donbass region. Moscow says its forces
for President Putin in his war.
If the occupiers think that Liman and Severodonetsk will be theirs, they are wrong. Donbass will be Ukrainian.
But this is the firepower they are up against. Russian multiple launch. Will it be too late? Joe Inwood, BBC News, Kyiv.
President Putin has signed a law lifting the age limit for people to be enrolled in the Russian armed forces. Legislation passed by Parliament on Wednesday means people over 40 can now be in a stampede in the southern city of Port Harcourt. A large crowd had gathered in a field as members of the Pentecostal Church handed out food and gifts to the poor. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, says she spoke with
in the HKSAR and beyond. The arrest of lawyers, activists, journalists and others under the national security law are deeply worrying. Hong Kong is due to be reviewed by the UN Human Rights Committee in July as a party to the International Covenant.
In Paris right now, and our correspondent Dan Johnson is with some of them who are feeling confident.
They certainly are, yeah. All the memories of last week have already been forgotten. There's loads of confidence here. People looking forward to this afternoon and to this evening's game. And I'll tell you what, a quick word with Ken and his mates. You feeling confident, Ken?
I'm feeling really confident. 4 years ago, they were better than us. 4 years on, we're better than them. We'll do them. 2 or 3. Easy. What do you reckon?
Why did you want to be here today?
Oh, listen.
We're world champions. Is it all right getting here? Does it cost you a lot?
No problem.
I'm so glad that Jürgen is arrested. I'm so glad he delivered what he said.
Scammers.
Hello, temperatures in the hottest parts scattered about, but a greater chance towards the northeast and into Bangladesh. And the monsoon moisture you can see in the forecast for Sunday. It's gathering ever more towards Kerala, southern Tamil Nadu and into Sri Lanka. So this is how things are shaping up on Sunday. That's your temperature into temperatures creeping back upwards into Islamabad in the coming days. It will be wet at times, certainly into Colombo. And as for New Delhi, here too, we've got some hotter days in the forecast. That's it for now. Bye-bye.
100 meters away from where I'm standing now. You can hear the sound of shooting and explosions.
This is a storm that has now claimed at least 14 lives overnight. You had people rushing to their basements.
We break stories from more
talk to and who to listen to, meaning our analysis is unbiased with absolutely no spin.
Unspun World on BBC World News.
Space shuttle launches were an amazing experience. It's combustible.
How scammers are hijacking the outpouring of sympathy for people in Ukraine to channel donations away from charities and into their own pockets. Now on BBC World News, tracking the
report poured in from across the globe. Scammers seized new opportunities to profit by making and sharing fake videos, spreading lies and stealing identities.
Eso es completamente falso. Esta persona está utilizando mi fotografía y mi identidad.
With the war affecting national infrastructure, Zelensky signed a law to make cryptocurrencies legal in Ukraine. It's one of the few countries to do so. So far, Ukraine says it's raised more than $70 million for the war effort in cryptocurrencies. At some of the tactics used by criminals to exploit our social conscience.
somebody's capitalizing on this, and I had a feeling people would fall for this, and people are
asking for donations for Ukraine on a daily basis.
Mainly what scammers try to do is they'll try to appeal to your emotions. That's one of the tactics we have seen, especially in this kind of scams, that including photos of women and children during the war and soldiers. It's almost like...
For Посміхнись children's clinic here in Kharkiv, which was destroyed as a result of the Russian invasion. We're seeking assistance to help care and relocate the children and other staff. This help can be received in form of transfer or can be converted to cryptocurrency.
Image search of the photo did match the Facebook profile picture of a children's doctor, but he's from Mexico City. And you can see that it's him from the place he works and his social media profiles.
Usando mi fotografía y mi identidad para pedir dinero para un hospital de niños, y eso es completamente falso porque pues la persona que pone las fotografías es una fotografía mía.
¿Cómo te hace sentir saber que alguien está...
Las cuestiones de dinero y de falsa identidad pues son ilegales.
Beyond reporting the fake profiles, there's not much that victims of identity theft can do. We contacted LinkedIn. They said, whenever we find fraudulent posts or
look a bit more legitimate, it adds a level of confidence. I think if you see an email like the one from Dr. Maxime Marinov with a LinkedIn profile and you click it and it's got a hospital name and a profile picture, you've got a number, an email address. You
charity websites.
As of today, this particular wallet has a total balance of over $90,000 US.
This wallet address had been used in other scams before, and it's not the only one.
And we are doing many things at Nova Ukraine, from helping people to evacuate, to delivering humanitarian aid, to helping people who cannot move, they may be disabled and elderly.
The
at Nova Ukraine.
And the registered charity office supposedly says it's in Ukraine.
Our offices are in Palo Alto.
And what's really interesting is that it has a London postcode.
I traced the
Ukraine. It's not UNICEF branded, it's not in our colours, and there's no typical donate button.
This scam has made $540, and there are plenty of clues that it's fake. Different email addresses in the from
and that usually means looking for those telltale signs in emails where different charities' branding is mixed up, or it asks you with a certain level of urgency but not the same level of legitimacy.
What's your message for the people behind this?
I emailed all the scammers behind the emails I'd seen. Not one of them got back to me. People are also using more subtle ways to make
siren noises and claiming to be footage of Ukraine when in fact they weren't. And that's a big way to make like fast money.
The way it works is TikTok users buying coins and then sending gifts.
And then we see this fiery smoke coming out of the building. And what I was able to capture was this moment where a finger pops up and taps the timeline of the video.
How do you...
Yes.
So do you think that that is why Sir William Ukraine is posting this footage he's clearly not filming live in Ukraine in order to make money from it?
That would be a...
On Instagram, people were also posting unverified content claiming to be Ukraine in an attempt to go viral. Jackson Weimer is an Instagram meme creator, and he posted a thread about it on Twitter.
I started where they were from a video game.
The video shared does show Russian aircraft, but it was filmed in 2020 in Moscow as part of a rehearsal for a national holiday. We found the footage on
account, and the reason why they want people to follow another account is for them to make money. On Instagram, the primary way people make money is by selling ads, and the more followers you have, the better ads and the more money you can make from your ads.
That account has been removed.
I would have liked. They're both males in their 30s, so they can't leave.
Tell me to say hi.
I launched the pop-up shop about 48 hours after the initial invasion, you know, in a desperate attempt of I need to notice that it was someone who had copied my profile picture and my header and started tweeting like me, and they were soliciting several of my followers for money.
Lindsay's is one of a number of
war in Ukraine.
Exactly. It also makes other people very wary of, you know, opening their wallets or donating when they can, because they just don't want to anymore. They don't trust.
Of aid.
Was a hell.
Behind every headline.
I had this feeling that I'm entering a prison.
There is a human story.
Listen. Kenya.
I've got to accept where I'm at and not let it get me down.
Our mind and the unity we have. That's the powerful things in the world.
Our World. This weekend on BBC World News.
Crush the resistance they come up against. Some have made it out, and you can hear their stories of survival here on BBC World News.
Cutting off Russia is driving a metals mining boom, but is digging up more of our own.
Hand accounts from the people who were there. These important events from the past help us to understand the world that we live in today. Join me, Humza Fihlani, for Witness History on BBC World News.
Did the Grey Report itself deliver? We learnt the likely impact of surging energy prices, a doubling of the numbers in fuel poverty in the UK. The government's answer to it? Throw money at the problem. Is it proportionate or inflationary? And what about those other sharply straight in? Ian Martin, at the end of a week, much predicted, much debated.
Yeah.
Where is the Prime Minister's position now, do you think?
Well, on one level, he's survived. There was all this hype about Sue Gray, who's an official, and he's free again. So in that sense, he's survived what was supposed to be a week that, if you'd said this gone back about a month ago, you'd said, well, it might bring him down, but he just gets away with it again, which Boris Johnson always seems to have a Tory brand and trashed his personal brand, and I think it's going to be very, very difficult for him to recover longer term, and he may attempt to fight the next general election. But Boris, remember, as a personality,
Steve Richards, should he be?
Well, in my view, no, but my view, frankly, is uninteresting and irrelevant.
I don't know. We've invited you on because we'd like to hear your
view. Well, my view on him is it's obvious. You know, he made the rules in question. And of course, they have done it before. With Margaret Thatcher, she had won 3 elections by then and ruled for 11 years. This is just 2.5 years after he won them a huge majority. So again, I think it's unfamiliar in British politics. That doesn't mean Tory MPs might still move against him, because in my view, trivial though that element of it is, what he's done is so transparently appalling.
Voted a couple of months and faces enormous economic problems. So who really wants to take over? There are potential successors, but not an obvious front runner. So they're watching and waiting. There's a part of the Tory tribe that believes that ultimately
are a snapshot of opinion at a particular time, but the FT published some figures after the Sue Gray report, and they suggest in a Savanta Comrades survey 65% of voters think Boris Johnson should resign, and this is all voters, so regardless of how they...
The thing that surprised me is that you didn't have more Tory MPs standing up in Parliament criticising him, given what we all know is the public mood on this. You had some MPs come out afterwards and make these statements.
This is the Privileges Committee that will look at whether he may have misled Parliament.
Right. to determine whether or not he deliberately and willfully misled and lied to Parliament. And, you know, he'll have to testify in front of that committee and, you know...
But he kicks the can.
And like, you know, usual, just sort of parse his words and fudge it and hope that by the time it comes around, people will have forgotten.
What about the culture of government? Because I was interested by something that a very report. I mean, for example, the criticism of civil servants is arguably as significant as it is of politicians in the Sucre report. Whether there's a sense that probably this has damaged not just an individual or a party, but it's damaged.
But they don't fear him. So it's impossible to imagine that culture or that behaviour under, say, Margaret Thatcher or Gordon Brown or Theresa May or anyone since the war. Goodness, you know, Churchill drank during the war, but the
So, I mean, what I find very disturbing is this is just part of a broader pattern, right? An alarming number of Tory MPs have run foul of the law, and I think it's a real sign of a party that's been in power for too long.
It only really works when the person at the top knows exactly what they're doing, can transact business, can command respect and authority internally. It flows through the system.
Peter Lord Hennessy, this is the kind of man who's written so much about the operation of government. He's a journalist and distorted by anyone who has the authority to do it. In other words, there are not enough checks and balances.
And Boris Johnson, because of that majority, and because the election is relatively close, still has quite a lot of authority. There was you go back after that grey day and think, oh yeah, we've done it, you know, and all the team will say we've got through it. But then you have Tory MPs going back to their constituencies at a weekend, speaking to constituents, party workers. That might provide them with quite a chancellor or leftwards. And so that's another fascinating ingredient, which makes it all incredibly hard to read, frankly, as to what's going to happen.
Is the consensus that when we sit here in a month's time, it could look the same, or it could
geopolitical situation which he and his advisors have called broadly correctly.
Yes.
So that's a big factor.
But does the British population care about that? I mean, where he has, I agree, done an exemplary job.
Bills and the general rising cost of living. What do you make of that announcement and the implications of it? Because even on the Conservative side, there seems to be a bit of, we're grateful for the money, but we don't like being the party that's doing this kind of thing, throwing money at a problem.
Felt by the poorest in this country. Not a situation which is unique to Britain, but just the scale of what's coming merits some kind of response. Also on the windfall tax question, well, Margaret Thatcher did windfall taxes in 1981 and 1982
That is what it is.
Yeah, but it is a slightly chaotic approach to the problem, and as you say, that's the other problem with the party's business. They've been very preoccupied with that and the war in Ukraine.
That it's followership rather than leadership, that in a series of places you've got one thing's the vote on, for example, whether
in Rishi Sunak, as I said earlier, this self-proclaimed fiscal conservative, and his spring statement a few weeks ago, which was a sort of minimalist approach to the economic crisis, was him. Boris Johnson was weak. He couldn't be this sort of call me a
even the party that would have normally argued differently was arguing the same.
Yeah. Now, whether Labour are supple enough to seize that moment is one of the big questions in the coming year or so. But that moment is here is fascinating, I think.
Can we talk about the economics of it? Because I wonder, Stephanie, when you sit writing Bloomberg Market, you look at the broader picture on these things rather than from a domestic political perspective. What are the markets making of the judgment the Chancellor's made?
The risk of a recession would have been higher because you're taking so much money out of the economy because those people wouldn't be able to spend money on other things. So, broadly speaking, we're in this, big debate right now.
Which is where you get little growth but high inflation.
High inflation and low growth. Or are we heading for a recession? And I think it's too early to say. I think the outcome of the war in Ukraine and how central banks respond.
And they don't have it in the United States.
Exactly.
The Federal Reserve in the US saying we're trying to basically hit a swift spot where we put up interest rates to curb inflation, but we don't drive out businesses, and therefore start to see joblessness go up.
Right, and so I think some economies Chinese growth for the first time since the mid-1970s. So that just turns the whole global economy on its head. We haven't been here before. The global, we've all counted on China as the world economy's savior. The U.S. is the world's largest economy. I think that's looking very uncertain right now. And I think we are probably in a period of volatile inflation. And if you look at the 1970s, inflation jumped up and down quite a bit over a number of years and spend more money.
The interesting thing now about the UK economy is that there is a labour shortage. So in the early 80s, Margaret Thatcher could use high unemployment as a way of controlling inflation. People were desperate to go into jobs and would take
this has been a feature of the COVID economy, is that people just stopped driving things like cabs and opted out of the economy. They might start to come back in. But I think you're absolutely right when you make the China point, because it's not just that there's this huge shift happening with the war in Ukraine, which undoes the global order. We've also got, we're at the end of, it's essentially a sort of 25-year process or model of how Western economies run.
Just crudely, the global
sticking together, siloed, shorter supply, lines of supply, greater emphasis on
trade
energy
closer
security,
at home because you've got
trade.
more security.
Now that disruption, and plus inflation, which is something which, I remember going to.
Brexit is another factor that the British economy, it was going to be a seismic shift. Everyone acknowledges it was going to be a big, big shift. And that is another factor. I mean, we have opted not to maintain trade with people closer at home.
Candid about this at the time, saying, look, there will be changes. We're in a period of transition. We think there is a sunnier upland ahead, but we don't know quite how we can chart the next bit. But this is an added complication, I guess. What's happening everywhere else to that?
I think it's
how that path looked
needs to be improved. But if you look at two disasters that have happened since Brexit, in both of them, COVID with vaccines, and I wouldn't wish to overstate this, but also with Ukraine, you see evidence there of the benefits of slightly.
Because islands are inevitably dependent for getting things, people, skills, whatever, from outside.
Well, I would predict that at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, the deal is going to, definition of travel is probably back towards some kind of renegotiated deal.
Brief last word, Stephanie, if you're.
What I was going to say is that Rishi Sunak, is under enormous pressure because of this big spending, that he's not a true Tory, that he's not proving that he's a low-tax Tory. Terrible problem with low productivity, and that is one of the reasons causing it. So he could be bold and come out with, a series of proposals to try to encourage investment.
Theme in his autumn budget, I suspect.
One would hope.
There you go. We're
Being at the heart of a live news show is challenging. Live, reflecting on the world in real time. I feel like we're doing a job that matters.
You're live with Lucy Hockings on BBC World News.
So where are you? It looks like I really shouldn't be having salt.
We might be able to stop or even reverse the aging process. I've just sat here and control things with my brain.
It's like technology telekinesis.
Cashless coffee, driverless cars. You can virtually try on clothes. Should we take it for a spin?
That's Click on BBC World News.
About that.
Former US President Donald Trump dismisses calls for gun reform and says the US should prioritize funding for school security over aid to Ukraine. And in Ukraine, officials warn they may need to withdraw from the eastern region of Luhansk. Dismissed calls for gun reform days after 19 children and 2 teachers were killed by a teenager with an assault rifle in Texas. Speaking at the National Rifle Association Gun Lobby Convention in Houston, Mr. Trump said that the massacre in Uvalde was a reason
killed. As families grieve and try to understand what happened, some politicians are weighing in. In Houston, 300 miles away, former President Donald Trump condemned the shooting and said the answer was to arm teachers.
Concealed carry. Let them concealed carry.
He was speaking at the annual meeting of the National Rifle Association. Outside, protesters gathered, some in T-shirts spattered with red, calling for tighter gun control. Back in Uvalde, officials have now acknowledged police made grave mistakes. Officers wrongly thought the gunman had barricaded himself in. They took time to organise an operation. While children in other classrooms escaped, those under attack. Ruben Mata Montemayor heard shots and found out later his great-granddaughter had been killed.
Where was that police that's supposed to be there to protect them kids? Where was he? At first they said he was there.
The shootings amplified the gun control debate. But for the families here, the prevailing emotions are shock and grief. Sancha Berg, BBC News.
A few minutes ago, President Biden has been speaking about the school shooting in Texas.
They're literally preparing to bury their children. In the United States of America, to bury their children. There's too much violence. Too much fear.
Which is facing a sustained attack. From Kyiv, Joe Inwards sent this report.
The scars of war etched into the fields around Liman. This city has been the scene of fierce fighting for weeks. Now the Russians say they have taken it. Who say that despite their overwhelming firepower, Russia is not having an easy time.
They are facing and continue to face a stiff Ukrainian resistance, which is why I won't go so far as to say it's too late to provide the Ukrainians with any system or capability that they
Free to talk to people unsupervised in Xinjiang during her trip to China, where Beijing is accused of sending hundreds of thousands of Uyghur Muslims for re-education. Ms. Bachelet also raised concerns about the current situation in Hong Kong.
It is important that and beyond. The arrest of lawyers, activists, journalists and others under the national security law are deeply worrying. Hong Kong is due to be reviewed by the UN Human Rights Committee in July as a party to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
Have a quick word with Ken and his mates. You feeling confident, Ken? I'm feeling really confident. 4 years ago, they were better than us. 4 years on, we're better than them. We'll do them. 2 or 3. Easy. What do you reckon? Why did you want to be here today? Oh, listen.
Parts of Pakistan still hitting close to 50 degrees Celsius. Into India, it's Rajasthan with heatwave conditions at times. And in terms of where there's some wet weather around, you can see in the Lacey satellite picture a little few clumps of cloud here and there, where there are a few Sri Lanka. So this is how things are shaping up on Sunday. That's your temperature into New Delhi. Actually, across much of Central Asia, it's looking a bit colder than average at the moment. And whilst most places are dry, you can see there will be a few showers and storms around at times. You may just Islamabad in the coming days. It will be wet at times, certainly into Colombo. And as for New Delhi, here too, we've got some hotter days in the forecast. That's it for now. Bye-bye.
Impact and cause the effect you wish to see in the workplace today.
It's a good photo of. I have an opportunity to create chaos.
There is always an email. We are so insignificant in this cosmos. Do you want some facts on baguettes? I'm just feeding you the stories. Maybe this is the context.
Relentlessly modern. And it's the perfect home for BBC Newsday. Located in Asia, but connected globally. To the east, the sun is rising. To the west, it's setting.
But whether it's good night or good morning, we're in the midst of another day.
Us are under attack in ways that we've never experienced before.
I bring that part of my Asian culture with me into everything I do.
They can kill us, and they will also die. I can't understand for war.
曾經被人性騷擾過。
This is Sophia Huang Shuiqing, one of China's most high-profile women's rights campaigners and journalists.
我就 feel 到咗佢就攬實咗我，之後我就感覺到佢從我嘅頭頂啦。
王建斌 vanished.
我個人是非常擔心雪晴目前的情況，我們都不知道她現在的狀況是怎麼樣。
In China, feminists are being rounded up and questioned in a wider state. Speak out are forced to remain anonymous.
I have a lot of trauma. I'm afraid the police will come and knock my door, took me away again.
Now, months after her disappearance, BBC Eye investigates how Sophia's story is being erased.
我其實有很多的場合都會想到雪晴。我其實真的很希望你。
When Me Too began taking the world by storm, Sophia brought the movement to China by investigating sexual harassment in the Chinese media. Sophia went on to report on China's most high-profile Me Too cases, sparking a dialogue that encouraged more women to speak out. But as the movement grew, from behind bars, she wrote this letter insisting that journalism is not a crime.
I am proud of who I am, even if it brought me to the cell now. They said I can be released if I confess the crime and promise.
A camera is installed outside her home in Guangzhou. In an act of defiance, she recorded herself holding banners, singing protest songs, and reading George Orwell's 1984 in front of it.
你好，在 Me Too 方面是更有 power， 它会有那个 feminist 的視角。
Before Sophia kick-started the Me Too movement in China, the country already had 4 other feminists were arrested for planning to hand out stickers about sexual harassment on public transport. They were detained for 37 days, prompting global outrage.
The Me Too movement
faced growing attacks online for posting feminist content. Last year, her Weibo account was taken down for allegedly posting illegal and harmful information. But hers isn't an isolated case. It became a symbol of the movement. He would review up to 60,000 posts per day.
你需要做的是条件反射，你的第一直觉是决定了这条内容是否会被删。如果你想要把它之前的一切全都抹掉的话，是一个很难的一个措施。中国当局的宣传力量来针对他，想要。
In the summer of 2021, she is awarded the prestigious Chevening Scholarship, funded by the British government, to pursue gender studies at the University of Sussex. But Sophia never makes it to England.
接他，在这个时间点上面，就突然间他就不回信息了。
No one knew where they were. But now, the BBC can reveal they were detained by the state in secret locations known as Black Jail.
有10多个警察进行调查审讯，连续24小时，甚至更长，甚至逼迫他们去签署一些伪造的一些笔录和证据。
After 1 month in isolated detention, years behind bars.
知道他失联了，然后可能被捕了的消息，我是非常 shock。 他在做的一些报道，怎么去帮助那些，比如说 Me Too 运动的受害者，我不知。
displaying their faces. They sent postcards to the detention center calling for the pair's release.
他做过很多报道，坚持在中国政府的打压之下讲真话，那我很敬佩他这一点。就此沉默，我们也要发出自己的声音。
Family, and Sophia would be here doing her master's degree at the University of Sussex in Brighton.
今天其实是我第一次来到 Britain， 然后第一次看到这片海。
which has a long history of supporting free speech and social justice movements. So why have both remained silent about Sophia?
学校的处境也会非常尴尬，就一方面他们不想惹怒中国政府，当做一种 cash cow 来利用的。
In an email leaked to the BBC following our request for comment, students and staff were warned not to discuss her situation. The university said this was a sensitive matter and requests should be dealt with.
相似的。
The University of Sussex told the BBC it remains deeply concerned about the safety and whereabouts of its prospective student, and says it has been in regular contact with both the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and Chief Name. It added that it has followed
On at 70. Elicon, celebrating 70 years of excellence.
This war in Ukraine has seen thousands of soldiers taken by both sides, but it's also seen civilians captured as well, as the Russians have looked to crush the resistance.
Business Weekly, here on BBC World News.
Join me for a special health-themed edition of Witness History, bringing you first-hand accounts from the people who were there. These important events from the
and what role tech might play. Follow the food.
Follow the food in association with Corteva Agriscience.
We are living in an era of seismic challenges. Our global food system faces never-before-seen stresses, from the and produce it.
I feel like I'm in a space station and super perfect lettuce has just magically appeared from the heavens.
It's a quest to meet the greatest challenges that are facing humanity. We have to wake up.
This episode, I'm taking a trip into the future.
10 years ago, this was science fiction.
To discover how
the interconnected world.
Farmers have always been on the cutting edge, adapting to an ever-changing world and set of challenges. But today, advances in technology or if these advances are going to open up a whole new world of high-skilled career opportunities while helping achieve global food security. I'm going to begin my journey by exploring how the worlds of science and technology are helping farmers understand crop behavior like never before.
So if you look at precision agriculture today, there are sensors which measure the surroundings. Like they measure
Laboratory have been working on a revolutionary method to make farming one of the most efficient ways to produce calories ever.
In olden times, or even now, when a farmer wants to know if his crop is healthy or not, he goes and
farmer to detect with the human eye. But using laser technology, Dr. Singh and his team have developed a way to read and decipher the different messages the plant is emitting.
if I switch on the laser, you can see that the
And to see for myself where cutting-edge tech like the plant sensor might end up, I'm heading to a new breed of farm that seems to be a natural home for all the technology you could throw at it.
10 by 10 by 10. So if you picture each one of these rows, you're looking at 13,000 plants.
I'm inside the world's first fully automated indoor farm. Sitting on just over 1 acre of land, like the plant sensor would fit really well in this world.
This is almost like coding. It's almost like biological coding, programming plants, understanding their behavior and trying to elicit that behavior by programming their environment.
Absolutely, and that's really the big step, is moving.
Appeared from the heavens.
And the automation doesn't stop there. What would traditionally be a labor-intensive process has been given the full tech overhaul, saving time and money, ultimately allowing the team to have between pass through here every single day of the week.
So after these have been rehomed into their bigger modules, where do they go next?
Yeah, so then we take them and we put them into large tables.
Yeah.
Which is what they're going to end up living in as they work their way through our grow zone.
Okay, okay.
And we end up doing with this
Process that takes 3 to 4 times longer in traditional agriculture. To find out how urban farms like this one are going to revolutionize our food production system in the future, I'm catching up
all have to get beyond lettuce.
Yeah, it's not a salad machine.
Exactly. Will it be growing corn and wheat? Not necessarily. That's not the most effective thing to grow. We feel tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and soft fruit like strawberries and blackberries are critical to make this.
Of being able to grow this many acres of food in an urban environment means it frees up farmland further out to concentrate on producing more staple crops like wheat, maize, and rice that will be just as vital in the future.
The future is systems like this spreading all over the country, then to the rest of the world. 10 years ago, this was science fiction. Today, it's possible. In 5 years,
farm labor is becoming expensive. Add in a global pandemic, and it becomes apparent what can happen when the supply is switched off.
2020, 2021, man, it was a heck of a roller coaster. We have been 160 seasonal workers. We only harvest by hand. We've found that our harvesters, they're professionals. They're great at it. Biggest issues is just lack of people that are willing to do the job.
Too soft and delicate to pick with anything by the berries on the plant. As it works its way through the field, each machine can cover 1/4 to half an acre an hour, with a fleet of 25 robotic harvesters able to match the work of between 80 to 100 workers a day.
It's one of the many reasons we love her. So we have a little gentle suction cup here that helps pull the strawberry away from the foliage, and then we have grippers that come down, just grab the strawberry, twist it, and remove it from the plant.
Levels. But without the workforce to harvest these crops, agriculture must adapt.
Introducing robotics into farming is inevitable. I don't see a future in the next 20 to 30 years where farmers are still as reliant on human labor as they have.
Workforce from out into the open fields into more of a controlled environment, into packing houses or into tech jobs to help maintain all of the equipment that will be on site. It's really going to be interesting.
You can essentially see almost every field across the world on a daily basis.
Follow the food, in association with Corteva Agriscience.
So what does that look like? At Corteva Agriscience, it looks like seeds that are adapted to different environments. So farmers not only conserve much-needed water, they increase the likelihood that seed will make it to harvest. Our biopesticides help farmers control pests.
Questions you have about the big stories of the day.
Reality Check. Get the facts straight.
Follow the food. In association with Corteva Agriscience.
Responding to this dramatic change. I've arranged to speak to Dr. Imbal Becker-Rescher, Director of NASA Harvest, NASA's Food Security and Agriculture Program, to find out how the agency's
satellites, they think astronauts, but in fact, agriculture has really been at the core application for satellites all the way from the beginning in the early 70s when the first satellites were launched.
I think it's fascinating that a satellite that is orbiting
Can see as well, but they can also see things that we can't see. So satellites provide us information in the near infrared, in the shortwave infrared, in the thermal. And what they do is they provide us a lot of information around crop health, for example. So they might be able to show a farmer that he's got an issue with
the important role smallholder farmers play in global food production and security than in Africa. Across the continent, there is an estimated 33 million of them, contributing up to 70% to inform her farming decisions, arrived in a relatively low-tech form.
We get the weather information from radios, TVs, but now the problem of this information is that it comes in as news. So if you are not there to listen to
has allowed more people access to the internet than ever before.
Margaret, how are you?
Hi.
The result is that organizations like Mercy Corps Agrifin and NASA have opened up satellite technology and vital real-time farming
and issues that are affecting multiple farmers. And you're able to then translate that information to positive advice to ensure that those farmers make the better decisions so that they can increase their productivity and incomes.
Alongside detailed satellite,
a number of the farmers that we have worked with have reported improved yields, have reported a better sense of satisfaction and hope that they can now actually turn around their farming business. We envision a future where smallholder farmers.
Agriculture cannot have an impact.
You know, when you hear the word grass, your mind might instantly go to that sort of inconsequential green carpet of people's front lawn. But on this sort of scale, it is
Ollie Roberts, who's using satellite data to help make this job a whole lot easier.
Ollie, there you are. How important is managing pasture land?
Managing pasture is absolutely paramount to farmers.
About what's happening to the grass in their paddocks.
I have your app right in front of me. I'm looking at some very impressive looking graphs, and yet as a botanist, I don't know what those graphs mean. Where's the data in this graph coming from? How do you get the stats in the first place?
Satellite imagery. It also utilizes local weather information, so rainfall and temperature and those sort of things.
Your AI is able to sense whether the field is overgrazed, undergrazed, or any variation in between those two extremes.
And the plant can perform at the best it can, while your animals can perform at the best that they can. The most exciting piece about this technology is that it learns each individual paddock on a farm. So it's a spatial. Is learning paddocks in South Africa, it's learning paddocks 50 kilometers north of Quito in Ecuador and in the United Kingdom. So it's incredible.
Well, Oliver, thank you so much for your help. It's fascinating stuff. I can't wait to see where we go from here.
Thank you very much, James. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Ever more efficient decisions, which could really translate into a level of environmental sustainability that we've never been able to achieve in the history of agriculture. The promise to really transform human health.
The world will look a lot different for the farmers of 2050. Meet Ashley. In 29 years, she'll be 40 and one of millions of rural women farmers. She'll need to get 70% more out of the ground than her grandmother did, with half the water, facing pests that don't exist yet, with 3 billion more people to feed. It's a big job. That's why Corteva Agriscience is partnering with women farmers today for a better tomorrow. We started by hearing from in farming and agribusiness seeing a 100% retention rate in Corteva's Women Agripreneur program. Across Europe, we created Talenta, a program developed to help women entrepreneurs in rural areas, providing training as we believe in supporting all rural women farmers through education and training to help them grow productive farms, successful businesses, and stronger communities. One farmer and one future farmer at a time.
खुश है ये आसमां ज़मीन हर तरफ छाए हैं हम ये ऐसी कूल है अपनी कहानी
Chill your dill.
Space shuttle launches were an amazing experience. It's combustible. It's really, shaking kind of ride.
I was the first black man they had ever seen.
You're a really wonderful dancer, but you're never going to be a ballerina.
How worried is the WHO?
We really need to focus on bringing transmission down.
You've been in office for some time. What are you doing about it?
This question is without context.
What the turnout was, it was over 70%. You know how many seats your party got? 0, Mrs.
We failed to.
Hello, this is BBC World News. I'm Lucy Gray. Our top stories. Outrage as authorities in Texas admit police were wrong to delay storming the school classroom where a gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers.
The information that I was given turned out in part to be inaccurate, and I'm absolutely livid about that.
Former US President Donald Trump dismisses this. And Liverpool and Real Madrid fans descend on Paris for the biggest match in European club football. Assault rifle in Texas. Speaking at the National Rifle Association Gun Lobby Convention in Houston, Mr. Trump said that the massacre in Uvalde was a reason to arm, not disarm. Sancha Berg reports.
Just days ago, children President Donald Trump condemned the shooting and said the answer was to arm teachers.
Surely we can all agree our schools should not be the softest target. Our schools should be the single hardest target in our country. And discreetly concealed carry. Let them concealed carry.
He was speaking at the annual meeting of the National Rifle Association. Outside, protesters gathered, some in T-shirts spattered with red. Those under attack were calling emergency services, whispering into their phones. The revelations have angered the state's governor.
The information that I was given turned out in part to be inaccurate, and I'm
control debate. But for the families here, the prevailing emotions are shock and grief. Sancha Berg, BBC News.
A short time ago, President Biden spoke about the school shooting while giving a commencement address at his alma mater, the university.
Speak. Those parents are literally preparing to bury their children. In the United States of America, to bury their children. There's too much violence.
We've heard that Rob Elementary School had measures in place. It had fencing, it had locks on the classroom doors, it had drills. That wasn't enough. What went wrong?
Well, we had 18 policemen in that elementary school. Is not a good idea. Prevention has to start long before the gunman shows up at the door. It's not a matter of creating a locked door. It's a matter of identifying troubled individuals long before they identify them. They need to be assessed with a threat assessment team, a crisis management approach to provide them with assistance and help long before they show up with a gun. We have developed threat assessment teams used throughout.
But it was a very short time before the event, about 15 minutes, I think, before before he entered the school, he messaged somebody saying he was going to an elementary school to do a shooting. I mean, it's such a difficult task.
I can see the risk factor and take action. And so threat assessment is an approach that is focused on prevention, identifying individuals who are at risk, not making predictions of which ones are going to go forward with the shooting, but who have been bullied in school, were alienated, were depressed, had problems with their family, lots of concerns and difficulties that should have been attended to long before they picked up a gun and went to school.
And what sort of assistance?
Health, social emotional learning approach, and only when a person is on a pathway close to committing a violent act do we involve law enforcement. So it's a calibrated approach. It's one that we're using in thousands of schools. You're welcome.
Let's turn our attention to Ukraine now. Russian forces are continuing to make gains in the east of the country. Troops, together with Moscow-backed militia units, are reported to have taken another key city in the Donbass region. Moscow says
a key objective for President Putin in his war.
If the occupiers think that Liman and Severodonetsk will be theirs, they are wrong. Donbass will be Ukrainian.
But this is the firepower they are up against. Ukraine's leaders say they need them too. It's understood to be under active consideration by their allies, who say that despite their overwhelming firepower, Russia is not having an easy time.
They are facing and continue to face a stiff Ukrainian resistance, which is
and each Russian gain, the tide of this war seems to be turning against the Ukrainians. They know that help is coming. The question is, will it be too late? Joe Inwood, BBC News, Kyiv.
Earlier we spoke to former...
He was successful and he implemented his original plan of conquering Ukraine for 4 or 5 days. What would have happened? We would have seen his killers on the Western societies. They all understand that that it's not only up to Ukraine to fight this evil, but for all of us all together. If we discuss the topic you asked about food for 500 million population outside of Ukraine. So indeed, there might be problems and effects which will not only hamper Ukraine, but also economic, political, diplomatic, to eventually get rid of Putin and to free Russia of Putin. And we need to be together, and we need to use all possible means.
A large crowd had gathered in a polo field as members of a church handed out food and gifts to the poor. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, says she spoke with candour during her trip to China to discuss alleged abuses.
Impact on the incident of terrorism, 59, if I'm not wrong, the heavy, if I would say, impact on civilians, on many times really needed. That we need to be ensured that those policies are in compliance with international human rights law.
Let's get the latest on the monkeypox outbreak now. Health officials in Ireland say they've...
Patients should avoid any contact with their pets for 21 days, as virologists feared the virus could get into domestic animals and ping-pong between them and humans. Cases are also mounting in Spain, one of over 20. Wendy Urquhart, BBC News.
Colombians are heading to the polls on Sunday to pick a new president in an election where deepening economic woes and social divisions are key campaign issues. Leading the polls is former guerrilla fighter Gustavo Petro.
It was difficult because, as always, there are all type of interests involved. And 10 days before the election, the polls, I decided to move and not to wait for the others to to my candidacy and to support Rodolfo Hernández, which is from the center, the candidate that has the best options to go to second round and to beat both.
Election. We've seen the pandemic has pushed more than 3 million Colombians into poverty, hasn't it? This is one of the major issues that every candidate needs to be talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that Rodolfo has the best way to deal with the problem. Everything goes into corruption. All our taxes, the national budget goes into corruption. We need to stop that in order to serve the poor and to end poverty. We shouldn't have the FARC, the former FARC guerrilla, backing up one of the leaders of these polls, which is the leftist, extreme leftist Gustavo Petro option. And we know that if he wins the
playing.
It has been very important for Rodolfo Hernández. It has been his main way to contact the population, and his support comes from very young people that are fed up with these corruption organizations. And so that's why he has had this incredible surge in the polls. And it's true that social media has been an amazing way to touch people. It's the first time it happened that people and young people got involved with politics. It's really an amazing story, actually.
Ingrid Betancourt talking to me a little earlier. The rising cost of living is impacting so many people around the world.
She says the magic moments of the kids learning new things bring her joy and pride. And yet she feels undervalued. With a low wage and rising prices, it's been hard to make ends meet.
I don't know that necessarily this role
is 18% in the past year. It's bad news for Hannah, who's a vegan.
It's insane to see how much it's gone up. Cauliflowers, broccoli, these really basic vegetables that should be, accessible.
Affordable cities for buying a house. The picture is also grim for renters, with a rise of 12% in the past year. To keep costs down, Hannah shares a house with others. They say with the current prices,
here, tens of thousands of New Zealanders move abroad, and many choose Australia. It's a country where they have the right to live and to work. And lately, the rising cost of living in New Zealand has been a major push. Take Chris and his family. They've recently left Wellington to...
Now, tens of thousands of football fans have converged on Paris, where Liverpool face Real Madrid in the Champions League final. The Spanish Giants are aiming to win the title for a 14th time, which would be twice as many as any other club.
Milan away, Villarreal away. We've come throughout the campaign, but this is the big one. This is the one that hasn't failed. This one has never failed.
I myself took an 18-hour ferry and a 4-hour drive just to be here. It's well worth it. When we win it, bring it home number 7.
Absolutely.
Win the Champions League.
Come on, big ears. Number 7's coming home.
Come on.
What's it been like so far?
It's been absolutely fantastic. The atmosphere is great. Everyone's happy. It's been fab.
Are you going to win?
We are going to win. We're going to win 3-0.
Some very confident Liverpool fans just there. I think we can go back to some of the live pictures from outside the stadium. No, there's a lot of drinking going on. There you go, proof. The 2.5 hours to go till kick-off. Thanks for watching.
To Sri Lanka. So this is how things are shaping up on Sunday. That's your temperature into New Delhi. Actually, across much of Central Asia, it's looking a bit colder than average at the moment. And whilst most places are dry, you can see there will be a few showers and storms around at times. You may just see a bit of wet weather into Almaty, for example. Much of Pakistan into the northwest of India is looking dry. And again, temperatures into the mid to upper 40s in some spots here. Upwards into Islamabad in the coming days. It will be wet at times, certainly into Colombo. And as for New Delhi, here too, we've got some hotter days in the forecast. That's it for now. Bye-bye.
This hotel, that time, it was the biggest hotel in Africa.
At bbc.com/real.
This war in Ukraine has seen thousands of soldiers taken by both sides, but it's also seen civilians captured as well, as the Russians have looked to crush the resistance they come up against.
BBC World News.
Talking Movies reports from the Cannes Film Festival, looking back at this film extravaganza. Among the highlights, Tom Cruise coming to the French Riviera, and heightened interest in films made by...
Stay on pole for the drama of Formula One with the BBC Sport website and app. With live text commentary, championship standings and race calendar. Go online or download the app now.
Rifle Association in Texas as the convention continued inside. Donald Trump spoke out against tighter gun controls. Ukrainian troops may soon be forced to retreat from the large eastern city of Severodonetsk, according to a senior official in the region. And tens of thousands of football fans have converged on Paris, where Liverpool face Real Madrid in the Champions League final. The Spanish giants are aiming to win the title for a 14th time, which would be twice as many times as any other club.
On the capital, and in the last few hours, multiple explosions have been reported.
The invasion triggered the largest refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War. Almost 6 million Ukrainians have fled the country.
More than half of that.
The millions more that are expected to come here into Poland.
We are at the capacity. We cannot accept another wave of hundreds of thousands of refugees in just one city alone.
We spent time with the city's mayor, Rafał Trzaskowski.
Don't have money to support them.
Ну, для мене дім – це є Україна. Ну, а все, що є інше, це на даний момент якось так.
Mayor had invited a group of local NGO leaders to his office to discuss the city's response to the influx of refugees.
No więc po pierwsze tak, dziękujemy wam za pomoc, bo by było ciężko bez was na zachodnim. Jest wolontariuszy.
Sprzątanie właśnie takich przypadków, który miał być tydzień, jest miesiąc, nie wiemy co dalej, a Warszawa całkowicie przepełniona.
Ile tych osób jest? Czy my będziemy, czy na przykład takich osób, które są zagrożone tym, że im się skończy pobyt w rodzinie, to czy to jest...
When it came to countries supporting refugees, now we are the second in the world, and we might become the first in the world. Warsaw is overwhelmed. We have more than 300,000 Ukrainians in Warsaw alone, and more than 600,000 passed through my...
Her parents have opened up their home to a Ukrainian family.
Как мой русский? Плохо. Плохо, но плохо. Как мой польский? Да, да. It's a mix of Polish. Налево, направо. There are less and less housing opportunities and more people coming, and also more and more people coming who don't know what's next. It's impossible to find. You know, tragedy of the whole situation, but I mean, I think it's doable in Poland, at least for now. I don't know about the long term. It's probably going to be a challenge.
They were taken care of by their families and by their friends. But then it changed. In a few days, there were 30,000, 40,000 people asking for accommodation and so on. So, of course, the reality was so slowly.
A high school is accommodating 22 Ukrainian refugees in one of its unused buildings. Single mother Vera and her daughter Eva arrived here 3 weeks ago from the city of Volodymyr-Volynski in the west of Ukraine.
Умови, все, що нам потрібно. От повністю навіть на перших початках вони приносили просто їжу. Ви потребуєте, ви приїхали не з добра. Хоча нас тут багато, душ, туалет, все є на місці. Ми просто як одна родина. І ми вже тут бігаємо, як в себе вдома. Ну, мусимо призвичаїтись до тої ситуації, яка на даний момент склалася. Ложечку. Цукру. Хочеш додому? А де краще? В Україні. Звісно, що в Україні, правда? Всюди добре, але добре, всі спокійно спали. Ну, це страшно в такий час, щоб я коли тільки сталася, я зразу ти сказала: Кітечка, ти зі мною, якщо ти зі мною, ти в безпеці. Можуть пролунати якісь вибухи. То ми в ложемці. Він не знає. То є не дуже безпечно вертатися додому, враховуючи те, які ще показали.
Мам, ну можна не плакати?
Можу, кіця. Я розумію, що в нас тут на даний момент... Що, кіця?
То я зараз яdę додому і привезу jeszcze jedzenia przywiozę.
On the second day of the war, Polish engineer Rafał joined the small army of volunteers to coordinate deliveries of aid across the border to Ukraine.
I was the after hospital because... Kulę? Kasia, przyniesiesz mi kulę? Now we drive to... 1 minute. Tak, Sławku?
Rafał, pojechałeś?
Nie, czekam jeszcze.
16 children and 3 carers from central Ukraine.
Miejsce jest wymarzone, po prostu wygląda jak taki polski dworek sprzed 200-300 lat. Jest bajeczna okolica. Tutaj jakby czas się zatrzymał, tak? Miejmy nadzieję, że to miejsce da dzieciakom spokój. Tyle przeżyły. Poczekaj, muszę spodnie, bo wiesz... Because in each house in Poland, there are living people from the Ukraine, yeah? We take to 2.5 million people. The Polish people, the biggest voluntariat on the world in this moment, yeah? Dużo. Jak zawsze dużo. Jeszcze wam nada спасибо, бо ми ще привезли вчора до.
І ми разом з ними, ми як одна родина. Одна проблема, що ми далеко від родини, від своєї батьківщини. Життя триває, в нас 2 дітей до України.
It's absolutely strange and frustrating me when the towns around the world so call me and said, Rafał, could you help us and give good PR? It's true, yeah. No camps for the refugees because citizens make the job.
Reporting on global conflict and meeting countless heads of government. Frontline experience that helps me know who to talk to and who to listen to, meaning our analysis is objective, unbiased, and I promise
As a mayor of a city, I have a responsibility. I need to help the refugees in this tragic situation, but I also need to make sure that the city functions properly. Because if it doesn't, then this incredible solidarity and energy of the
Окей. Застала с той стороны, пошли назад.
Like hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees in Warsaw, Vera is starting to confront the reality that she may not be going home anytime soon.
We've guaranteed Ukrainians citizen
Ukrainian refugees looking for accommodation in Warsaw So the mayor is taking a major step to reclaim Russian-owned property, which can then be used to house refugees.
That's the property of the Russian embassy. It's called a spy-bed state, but the idea is to give it to the Ukrainian refugees. It's symbolic. I mean, we sometimes need symbols. And of course, this building should also serve the Ukrainian community in Warsaw, I hope, as soon as possible.
Powiem jedną rzecz. Dzisiaj miałem w planach wejść na ten budynek i ustalić flagę ukraińską. Ale nie chcemy
crossing a Polish-Ukrainian border, and of course we are at capacity, so that is worrying. So if there's a second wave, we'll keep on helping, but the conditions will deteriorate, and of course then we would...
The Ukrainian president says it's safe to return.
Гострий, бачиш? Діндон?
Так, діндон.
Ну окей, хай буде діндон.
Це діндон називається.
Діндон? А що діндон? Бо там годинник зверху. І? Дивись, як гарно. Бажання?
Так.
Да. А скажеш мені, яке? Я тобі навіть скажу своє бажання. Хочеш? Хочеш? Я хочу, щоб на Україні скоріше кінчилась війна, ми повернулись додому і зажили мирно. Так? Не дім зараз, а, скоріше всього, місце, де ми можемо перебути якийсь час. Отак. Ну, для мене дім – це є Україна. Ну, а все, що є інше, це...
Я хочу в тебе скопту дивитися.
Він, я бачиш, він закритий. Я думаю, що тут закритий. Хочеш, ну ставай. Бачиш, там нічого не видно, бо то, що треба його тако чик робити, там теж нічого не видно. Бачиш, воно закрите.
Continues.
Hello, your latest world weather update now. Some dangerous weather on the way into southern Mexico. The first hurricane of the season expected to form and become a hurricane during Sunday. Hurricane Agatha move in on Monday and see some to Chiapas and into Guerrero. These are the areas that could well see hundreds of millimetres of rain, the brightest colours on the rainfall picture here. In fact, isolated amounts of maybe up to 400 millimetres of rain here as that system moves in. Of course, with destructive winds, a storm surge Canada as well. Strong to severe storms, isolated tornadoes, very gusty winds, large hail. Whereas across eastern parts of the USA, it is going to be a much quieter day on Sunday, particularly through eastern Canada, where we've had some really heavy rain and some we'll find in New York, temperatures are going to be heading up and quite significantly so. That's it. Bye-bye.
Our global food system is under profound pressure from climate change, population growth, and fractured food. Join me, James Wong, for Follow the Food on BBC World News.
I want to talk to you about the politics of this. Did she not think she was going to get that question?
It's important to remember